You know what I just recognized about myself right now? In this moment, I was able to turn a quote unquote failure into a success. Now, I say quote unquote failure because it's not a complete failure unless I choose to look at it that way. It was an interruption. It was something that happened while I was in a flow state. I was in the middle of speaking and I got a notification on my phone. It popped up. You probably saw my last video talking about that. But it made me realize that I have this ability to overcome that kind of failure and turn it into a success. What do I mean? Well, the first video that I shot, that was when I got the interruption from this notification. It completely took me out of the flow state, and right after I stopped the recording, I felt frustrated inside. And I was going to let that affect me. I was going to say, well, I'm not in the mood now to record. That just threw me off. It took me off my game. I just want to go home now. But then it made me think, I'm like, how can I use this? How can I use this? That's a good question to ask yourself. I took that and I switched it into how can I use it for success? You know what I did right after that? I recorded another video. Not only did I record another video, but I made that video about what had just happened. I just talked about the experience that I had learned from it. I learned about how I can overcome this in the future, and I shared that. And now I'm sharing this video. And you could see what I'm saying is I was able to build success on top of this quote unquote failure. And I'm doing it again with this video here. You see, because there's no actual failure. Failure is literally the mindset that you choose when you quit. If you don't quit, there's no such thing as failure. Now, this is not just some Instagram quote that you might put up and then like put it as your lock screen and feel good about it. I mean it literally. There is no such thing as failure unless you allow it to. Unless you allow it to affect you so much so that you never want to try again and that you give up growing. That's failure. That's ultimate failure in life. When you make a mistake, that's not failure. It's something that you can use to grow. It's something that you can learn from. It's an experience. And so I took that experience that I had and said, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I learn from this? If I go ahead and say like this was a failure, I would have stormed off and felt upset and then ruined the rest of my day. I would have said that was a failure, but I chose not to. I changed my mindset. The tendency, of course, is yes, you feel like that in the moment. You don't want to feel good in the moment because you're annoyed. But that's only your choice, and you can stay in that mood for as long as you want or as little as you want. So if you see that that's not serving you, then why keep harping on, I don't know what the term is, but holding on to that kind of feeling? Why would you do that to yourself? You know that it's not helping you. So let it go. Let go of those emotions, those bad feelings. They're not helping you. Instead, think about what can you do? How can you switch this situation? How can you turn this around? Haven't you seen the greatest comebacks in history have been from people's failures? They didn't allow it to get to them so much so that now they say, that's it, it's done. It's never done. If the clock is still on the scoreboard when you're playing the game, there's still time. You could still make the shot. There's still a chance. Never give up. Again, this is not just some feel-good motivational message. I mean it literally. You can absolutely change anything. You could change your mindset right now and produce results that you never thought was possible. I'll give you an example of one that I've heard, and then I'll see if I can incorporate a personal example from myself. One thing that came up in my mind was this idea that somebody had to create an adhesive that would last forever, something so strong, like a glue, that would be so strong that you could never pry it apart. Well, the chemist that was working on this at the time made that, and it was a failure because it wasn't sticky. It was sticky a little bit, but it wasn't sticky enough to stay forever. But the chemist was smart, and he said to himself, how can I use this? How can I use this quote unquote failure to my advantage? And you know what that turned into? A multi-million-dollar business. Post-it notes. Sticky notes, think about that. Those things where you tear them away and they can only stick just a little bit. What a perfect example of how you could turn failure into success. Now, the example that I had in my mind from mine is not as intense as this story, but one thing that I just want to share is where I'm able to turn my failure into success. But you know what I also thought about? How there have been times where I accepted defeat. I completely accepted defeat, and they're both in the same example. They're where I'm in the middle of playing cards. Me and my family, we like to play cards. So oftentimes, dinner time, we like to play cards. And we're in the middle of playing, and I'm either doing really well or doing really poorly. But depending on my mindset, I completely change how I respond to that failure. If I'm losing, I can either get that motivation inside me to say like, no, I'm gonna win. Regardless of whether or not I actually end up winning, just by changing my mindset, I often am able to switch things around. I've gotten to the place where I've been able to switch my mindset completely, a whole 180, from the point where I got 0 points all the way to where I actually win the game, where nobody else thought it was possible. But I don't tell this to you so I can boast. It's not some crazy thing to say like, look how successful I am, I won some game of cards. But what I'm telling you is that you can change your mindset to flip it. But there have also been times where that's not how it went. And I allowed the defeat to get to me. And I started feeling really negative inside. And I started to say like, this isn't working, I can't win. And again, this is just a simple example, I understand. But you know what? This is kind of where it applies, oftentimes to the most mundane examples in your life. It's often not these huge things where you see success and failure, but every small moment that you're taking in your life is what's determining your direction, your ultimate destiny. So what I'm saying is with this game, I'm playing a game with them and I accept defeat. Oftentimes what ends up happening is I'm gonna lose. And all that does is just make me feel worse inside and reaffirm to myself what I believed. And that was that I wouldn't win. But remember, the opposite is true. When you believe to yourself that you can do it, you can turn it around, you could change, you can not give up. That comes true too. And it just reaffirms to you that it was true. And it's this positive cycle rather than this negative cycle. You see the difference? Again, it's in the small examples. It's in these small moments of our life that you have a choice. You have the choice at any given moment in time what circumstance means to you. I say this multiple times in my videos. You have absolutely no control oftentimes what happens in the external world, but you have absolute control over what it means to you. So use that to your advantage. Turn failure into success.